Hello, it's Illuminostic, and today we are going to dive into a subject that probably will end up being multiple live streams because each of the four components of this charge of the initiate or powers of the Sphinx, there's a lot of different names for this quote from Eliphas Levi that actually has Greek roots. The phrase is escaping me exactly. Sapere auto, I believe, and it basically means to reason for oneself. And so, to know, to dare, to will, and to keep silent is sort of almost universal. I don't want to call it a law, but it's a set of rules that all of these different Western occult, Wicca has adopted it. Witchcraft, I've seen a lot of articles where they're kind of claiming it. Of course, any OTO or Thelemic mystery school. It's really become a ubiquitous sort of feature of these practices and traditions. And so there's also a lot of, I think, bad information, confusing information, and just, valid but generally conflicting sort of what's going on. Andrea Dingbat. By the way, Micah, I do actually have a lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram instructional video. It is, you're a patron, so it's somewhere in the patron stuff. And there's also an in-depth explanation of the processes and the hows and whys and what's of it on the public channel. I saw that you asked that question. I wanted to get to it. So I just wanted to throw my 2 cents into the mix and, just give my perspective on what this is about and why it's important and what it all means. Eliphas Levi actually did a pretty fair job of explaining that. For those that may not be aware of this, Aleister Crowley actually considered himself the reincarnation of Eliphas Levi, and whether or not reincarnation is an actual fact, there's definitely a succession or a sort of, torch bearer. There is a spiritual DNA that certainly traces a line from, say, Eliphas Levi to Aleister Crowley to Timothy Leary and onward into the future, right? These people that are seeking after truth and trying to draw the general consciousness of the human race up, or at least to empower the individual to pursue their most fully realized potential and expression of their inner being, which is what Thelema is all about. And that particular fact is why I think Thelema is probably the it's unfortunate to think of it as a religion, but it is the system that has the answer to our modern predicament, in the sense that, as I am always saying, it is this crisis of purpose that has us sort of just plunging into the abyss as a species and culturally and socially. So another element of this that I wanted to explain before we get too far, and this is kind of drawn from my Patreons or patrons' secret streams. If you're not a patron, you can click the link in the chat, or you can find the link in the chat. I don't know if it's clickable, and in the description, and you can join those secret streams. And you can also access all of the secret streams I've ever done. So it's like buying your way into an entire hidden channel. It's probably a third of the content that I have publicly, quite a bit by now. And so we've been using the 28th Albert Pike's book, Morals and Dogma, to and one of the things that Albert Pike mentions in that chapter is that, despite all of the false information and misperception and superstition and illusion that are constituent elements of all of the world's traditions and religions and philosophies, if you look at it with the right kind of eye, you can see how there is an overarching sort of plan or process unfolding, and that it is really a map of the deepest parts of the psyche of the collective humanity. And so what we should see is, an evolution, that if the truth is self-substantiating, the rest of it are like shadows which pass away, and then there is that which remains, which is this self-substantiating truth. And so from Eliphas Levi to Aleister Crowley, we have some evolution. And I think that this particular set of phrases, I guess, or maybe it's one phrase in 4 parts, is a good example of how that actually works. And it's important to us all as individual seekers and metaphysicians and magicians to be aware of these processes, because this is our job. This is what we're really doing, trying to bring ourselves a step further than those that preceded us, and hopefully bring the human race forward a few steps with us. So, if magic is the science and art of causing change to occur in conformity with will, which is the definition that Aleister Crowley gave it in his book Magic in Theory and Practice, which I've always found to be the best explanation, and basically being an expression of this idea that once you really know yourself, which is the charge of every great thinker throughout history, whether you're talking about Plato and Socrates, Aleister Crowley, Jordan Peterson says this sort of thing a lot now. You have to know yourself first and foremost. And being that we are but fragments of this one consciousness that has exploded into all of these splinters and become the universe, to know the external world is to know our internal world. But we cannot relate to the external world without knowing the internal world. So it's a dual process of knowledge. And so to know means not only the inner exploration and the development of our intuition and analysis of our traumas, and developing the skill to be objective in analyzing our strengths, weaknesses, talents, and using all of that information to discern what is our true will and the proper path for us to take going forward in our lives, but also to study the natural sciences and to know the conditions and the circumstances that we are confronted with, and also the support networks that the universe has provided for us. So, a very deep and thorough knowledge of both our inner and outer worlds is an essential element, really, of every human being. But this audience, I guess, we're targeting magicians and shamans, so particularly for those type of people. So, to know. And as a power of the Sphinx, this is man. He has the head of a man, right? The Sphinx also has wings in Greek mythology. Okay, so to know, the cherub is man, or the animal, and the element is air, which is the the cerebral, the intellect, and then to will. To will something without knowledge is foolhardy at best, right? You are bound to get yourself into tremendous trouble. Let's actually look at how Eliphas Levi phrased this stuff, because I really liked it. When one does not know, one should will to learn. To the extent that one does not know, it is foolhardy to dare, but it is always well to keep silent. To learn how to will is to learn how to exercise dominion. But to be able to exert willpower, you must first know, for willpower applied to folly is madness, death, and hell. And so, one of my big mistakes in my own life, especially when I started to figure all this stuff out, and I seem to develop this. I didn't seem to. I did. I shouldn't. I diminish these things. Another bad habit of mine. Uh, but you know, everything that I needed for my particular, for the realization of my true will would already be there when I realized I needed it. And I started to really open up my knowledge of how consciousness interacted with the fundamental energies of the universe and all of this stuff. And I had also noticed that most people around me didn't seem to be on the same level. So the ego maybe started to swell some. Other people noticed all this and started kind of putting me on a pedestal. And the end result of that was that I pursued my goal, or my, you know, the realization of my destiny with more enthusiasm than I had wisdom, right? So, you know, one of the things that we have to keep in balance with this square is that the base of the pyramid must rest on a level plane, right? Otherwise, it's going to be lopsided, and that's going to affect its longevity. And if our apex is to surpass the stars, then how broad must our base be? But it must also be in balance. And that's what I mean by level. And that, by the way, is one of our greatest tools in our search for the acquisition of power, is the knowledge that these physical world models and their allegories are the secrets to power, right? So this is why the symbol of the pyramid is, you know, used by empire, for example, because it's the most stable geometric shape, and that is what we want our empires to be, right? So there's deep and profound knowledge there. Okay, so we are on if you're going to will something, right, you have to be able to be objective and knowledgeable about the conditions and circumstances that confront your ability to realize whatever it is that you're willing. You have to have actual pathways, conduits for the energy to move. You, as Eliphas Levi once again said, for he who wills what is true, anything is possible. And this is where a lot of people get themselves screwed up with magic. Right? It doesn't always work. There are limitations. Your perception is faulty. And there is chance that people oftentimes confuse with, you know, the influence of a higher power or fate or destiny. There are all sorts of pitfalls and traps. And so the necessity to develop this clarity and this knowledge of both yourself and your shortcomings and strengths and the external world, tremendously important. You have to have this all perfect. Otherwise, you're gonna get yourself in trouble. Any effect can be, any change in which an object is capable can be accomplished by the proper application of the proper kind and degree of force on the proper medium through the proper object, right? If you fulfill that, you're going to have success, but you have to actually know. And then in order to will, you must have truth to support you, because truth is the only thing of substance, right? So if you fancy yourself a painter, as Aleister Crowley used this example, if, you know, a young man is forced into medicine by his parents, when he is really a painter, he will be both unsuccessful and unhappy in medicine. Or if someone fancies themselves a rock star and you don't actually have the talent, those are wish demons. So you have to actually have the objectivity to evaluate yourself objectively, and also to be realistic about the terrain that you're confronted with. It's an extremely tricky bag. And so with will, we have the bull and the element of earth, for obvious reasons. You know, the bull is extremely stubborn. And that is a necessity if one is to act with total conviction. The bull also rages. His horns are dangerous. Properly constrained, he can draw huge weights. Like an ox can be used to draw carts full of stones, and they're unstoppable in their power. But if you release a bull in a china shop, you're going to have a bad time. Everyone's going to have a bad time. So, and then, the earth and its stability, we don't really need to go into why that all fits together. But so far, and this is Eliphas Levi's attributions, we're going to get into what Crowley changed and why he was correct, and why, again, it does represent this evolution of consciousness that is the charge of every adept, right? So then to dare, and Levi has assigned the lion and fire, which all seem reasonable again. So to dare, once you know and you have the will, I find the daring part the easiest, the easiest part of this formula, because all you have to be able to confront there is the possibility of failure. But as far as motivation goes, without the dare, without the actually taking the chance, you're guaranteed to fail. So you might as well dare. I don't really see a problem there, although if I really look back again and analyze my life objectively, I can see where I have not made effort for fear of failure. Certainly, it held me back for until I really started to tap in to this kind of consciousness and energy that the mysteries and psychedelics and all this stuff really offer. That was a huge impediment for me. So it's that self-knowledge again is essential to dare. So once you know and you have your will, because you have actually discovered your true will, you know what it is that you want to do, you have defined it with perfect clarity, and you are ready to dare, you're going to start the fire, then you must keep silent. And Levi has assigned the eagle and water to this power of the Sphinx. Although I feel that's incorrect, and so did Aleister Crowley. I noticed it right away the first time I saw this, that it was hard for me to understand why he had assigned this keeping silent to the eagle. Water I can understand, because if water is raging, it is not silent, and it is this peace and serenity and clarity that we need in order to become like a hollow tube to bring down fire from heaven. It is necessary that we are a vacant space, or at least that we don't have the interference patterns of fear and all of these other sort of negative vibrations that restrain our ability to be an antenna for cosmic consciousness. For me, that's the main thing. This is what meditation is about. Practices that allow you to eradicate fear from your inner being, or at least to have perfect control over your emotional responses. And of course, water is often a symbol of our emotions. And the way that the eagle relates to the water, the only thing I could think is that eagles often live around water. And if the water is still and calm and clear as a consequence of that, the eagle is able to target the fish that he eats and grab them out of the water. But I feel like that's kind of a stretch, and I'm really not sure. Doesn't matter, because we're going to get to what I think are the correct attributions in just a moment. Let me check in with the chat real quick. I'm looking at my notes at the moment. We'll get to that, Micah. Have a feeling I know what's going on with you there, buddy. So the silence, this particular element of all this stuff, has caused an awful lot of suspicion, some of it probably justifiable, of the mystery schools. Some have accused the Freemasons of feigning secrets. And so there is this silence because there is nothing actually to tell. Um, there are all sorts of different reasons and interpretations that you can make of the necessity for silence. I've seen a lot of really bad guesses when I was sort of preparing for this live stream, different blogs and stuff where people are just really, really obviously talking out of their asses and making stuff up and feigning authority. I really feel bad for the people out there that are just starting out on this journey, because the internet is just bogged down with truth and fiction, and I imagine it can be pretty difficult for the neophyte or the tyro to discern which is which and who is who. At any rate, though, silence is, of course, another one of those sort of ubiquitous prescriptions that's given to the seeker, the initiate. You know, whether you're talking about a monk that is pursuing perfect enlightenment, or a shaman or a shaman's apprentice in South America preparing for a plant dieta or undergoing a dieta of, say, Bobinsana. It's said that the energies, particularly from Bobinsana, because it's not really a psychoactive plant, are so subtle that you need absolute calm and a very simple diet and none of this interference pattern in order for the medicine to be efficacious, right? So and then of course, if you're an occultist of any type, you're generally going to be engaging in meditation as part of your practice. So this is something that is important to a very wide range of traditions, and in scientific illuminism or mystery school practices, Aleister Crowley advised this as well. If you look around the world and you see consistencies, if you see something that has ubiquity in disparate systems, then it's like more likely that that thing is worthy of consideration as having some kind of value. In the jungles of Borneo, a left-hand path sorcerer is turning to the left, and a healer is turning to the right. We have the same terminology in the Western occult, so that's an eyebrow-raising sort of significance, right? And then to take this a little bit further and a step even deeper, why is it that this silence and calm leads to something like illumination? Well, if we took a look at the Kabbalistic system and the three veils of negative existence, or even Alan Watts believed this. I believed this before I ever read the Book of Lies and realized what he was saying. If you haven't studied that book, absolutely recommend it. But it's basically this idea that at the very center of the universe, we have an absolute nothingness. And then as you can think of it, this is a way to conceptualize it. It's probably beyond actual conceptualization, but in order to speak about it, we have the same, it's like the sun. At the very core of the sun, you have tremendous heat, and as you move away, that dissipates. And the dissipating heat actually means that there are less and less particles. This is kind of the reverse, right? Because we're on the other side of the veil, where everything is reversed. And so you have this absolute nothingness, and then as you move away from this nothingness, it's a little bit less nothing until there's actual substance, and that is our material world, right? But at the very core of it, there's this absolute nothingness, and it's reflected in this idea, if it turns out to be true, that there's a black hole at the center of every galaxy, right? Because everything is a reflection of this one thing doing one thing. Another interesting element of this that hit me the other day during our secret stream. By the way, you guys, hit the like button, please share, subscribe, support us on Patreon. We are demonetized. We get no support from anywhere. You can support us on Zelle, PayPal, Cash App, all options in the description and the chat. And again, we are totally supported by the YouTube community, so we really do appreciate it. So when we were going through the secret stream, there was this mention of this nothingness at the center of reality in creation, that God actually is nothingness. In fact, earlier in that book by Albert Pike, he's speaking from the point of view of the deity, or writing from the point of view of the deity, and he said, the Phoenicians thought me light, but I am nothing, and nothing is written in all caps. Like, and when, you know, in Masonic literature, Crowley did this as well, really important or holy things are, you know, often in black, so they really stand out, so that, you know, there's emphasis on this line. And it was all caps and black and bold, you know, so it's like, bam, this is like a big deal. And that was definitely some kind of insect. Just I was thinking about quantum loop theory, and this idea that the universe started out as nothing that became conscious, and that basically began the process of creation. And then once all of the possibilities that can be without violating any of those laws that made this creation possible, it collapses back on itself, and once it becomes small enough, the energy is compressed enough, it explodes again, and it's another big bang. And I always intuited that there was variation each time. And I was thinking, well, if it collapses into nothingness, where does this variation come from? And then I remembered the three veils of nothingness from Jewish mysticism, and thought, well, maybe like the rings of Saturn, some of that information can be retained in these layers of not quite absolute nothingness. And I think that also, if it was absolute nothingness, when it was crunched down into the singularity, it wouldn't blow back up. Just an interesting sort of side note there, that I feel like that may have helped me get over a hurdle in my metaphysics. So where are we in this process? Okay, so keeping silent. Another suspicion about keeping silent, that, you know, and it's also a critique of the mysteries and secret societies, is that, you know, it allows for abuse of the individuals that have joined the secret society. And it also is about concentrating power and keeping it away from the profane, which is generally the reason that is given. And when we look around the world, it kind of seems like the suggestion that keeping the knowledge away from those that would abuse it is that game was lost a long time ago. You know, we clearly have the black hats and the white hats, the left-hand path and the right-hand path. So that reasoning doesn't really seem to hold up in court. Although I can assure you that there are some that kept those secrets for those reasons. It should also be noted that in the last 100 years or so, there have been a number of oath breakers that have printed the totality of the Masonic secrets, the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawns, processes, rituals, everything. Israel Regardie printed those. He was actually Aleister Crowley's secretary, so he was also privy to a lot of whatever Crowley might have known that wasn't supposed to go out to the public. Crowley himself printed a tremendous number of the formerly secret doctrine, and the defense of this is that it is time for this knowledge to become just common knowledge, that the time for secrecy is over. And that was Israel Regardie's defense, and also Aleister Crowley's. And I think that there are people in high places that agree, because Aleister Crowley was allowed to live out his life until 1972. His tongue was not cut out. You know, nothing happened to him. He was able to print books. You know, they did attack his reputation, which may or may not have been deserved. But also, Israel Regardie lived to be 88 or something, I think, and he didn't have any problems. And then you might ask, well, are the secrets that Regardie and Crowley printed actually legitimate? And the answer to that is absolutely. We sometimes forget, I think, that the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, the Stellum Matutina lineage, was actually founded by two 33rd degree Freemasons. And according to the rules of Freemasonry, 33rd degrees can create external bodies that have legitimate lineage. That's how they're created in the first place. And the OTO also was created by two 33rd degree Masons. And the reality that the universe always does things in equals and opposites, right? We have two 33rd degree Freemasons at about the same time going off from the main body and creating a white hat lodge, the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, and then we have these two other guys splitting off two 33rd degrees at roughly the same time period, starting the OTO, which is like left-hand path. So, you know, these antinomies occurring in conjunction. So anyways, that is basically my opinion of the overall, you know, here I am saying, he who speaks does not know, and he who knows does not speak, and I sure am speaking a whole lot. But, you know, I think it is time for this knowledge to be disseminated, and for, you know, anyone that chooses to pursue this path to be able to do so. And there's more to this silence subject. There's also the idea that you risk giving away power. Shamans here in South America oftentimes will not share their ayahuasca recipes or certain songs that they'll use to communicate with certain spirits in private. They will never, ever, ever share that information with anyone else. There are secrets in all of the magical traditions all over the world. And I saw, you know, one reason that was given to a witchcraft group was that the reason for secrecy was that we don't want people to undo our magical workings. And I think that's probably the least concern. Another way to think about it is that a concept is like a ball of energy. If it has coherence and it has the potential for materialization, it is a thing, maybe even a living thing. You know, as Crowley said, the symbols are alive on the astral plane. This is the same sort of idea. And so when you share your secret revelations with others, it's like your ball of energy is now leaking. And it is true that the dissemination of revelation can create rivals and jealousy, and then it is possible that your own energy could be used against you later on down the road. Unless, the thing is though, unless you're like really, you know, rolling deep with a bunch of left-hand path types, that's kind of a paranoid position. You know what I mean? I don't know that most people really need to worry too much about rivals double-crossing them. But there's other reasons for silence as well, and this one I find particularly worthy of discussion because I like to try to offer what I don't see everywhere, right? That's why I'm not going too deeply, by the way, into the other elements of silence, because you can find plenty of writings about them from all these other perspectives that I'm just glossing over. But this one, I think I don't see a lot, and it's the idea that you, for one thing, casting pearls before swine is a waste of pearls. The profane cannot understand. So a lot of the secrets in the mystery traditions are secrets because I can tell you till I'm blue in the face, and if you do not have fertile soil prepared in your being to receive these seeds and water to nourish them, they'll just die. They won't even go that far. They're not even planted. Nothing has happened. So, you know what I mean? You have to have gnosis in order to make utility of knowledge. And so if there are things that are of such a profound and deep level of truth, that they require secrecy, in most cases, if you just tell someone that isn't prepared to receive the knowledge, they're not going to understand anyways. Another element of this, that actually there are safeguards taken in Freemasonry and in the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. They took great caution when I was involved with the Stella Matutina. They sealed envelopes were used. How to explain? So you may, in the course of your ritual work, experience certain visions, and these visions are catalyzed by the processes that these rituals are catalyzing, right? So you will see, in this case, a certain thing or things in association with a certain archangel. And then it's revealed to you that it was known that that's what you would see once you got to this point in association with that archangel. And I'm not mentioning it because I don't want to ruin it for you. And that is the point. That one of the reasons for silence is that if I give you too much information, when you have these experiences yourself, you don't know whether you are just, is this just stuff I heard already from Illuminostic, or was this a real experience? And if I told you what you're going to see in conjunction with the archangel, your imagination can just do it. And the value of the process of the ritual is totally lost. It's gone forever. So that's another reason for the silence. So let's have a look at how Crowley corrected the powers of the Sphinx. To Will, he attributed also signs now. So Leo, Lion, and Fire, which I think is much better because Will and Fire, the fire is the creative. We talk about a spark igniting our creative process. Without light, which is born of fire, there is no life, there is no creation, nothing happens. Even more fundamentally, I think the electromagnetic energy and the other sort of perturbations of that type of wave that are the basis of matter, right? Matter is light in a frozen, in a standing wave, right? There's no creation at all without fire. And there is no fire without will. Something had to realize it was there, eheye, right? In the language of Jewish mysticism, I am, this realization that this nothingness had, which some say was a bad bargain. And that led to I create worlds, which was will. Okay, so fire and will, obviously, a lion with its mane is a symbol of the sun. And it is also considered to be king of the jungle, so it reigns supreme, it has dominion, it can do as it wills, and that is the whole of the law for a lion on the savannah. And this is the type of empowerment that we're looking for as individuals seeking our full potential for expression. And then to dare, we have attributed the element of water and the symbols of the eagle and the dragon, which I just noticed that I actually misspoke. Crowley did leave the eagle under the attribution of water. I thought he had changed that. Still confuses me a bit. I'm not going to claim to understand that. To dare water. I mean, it is an emotional process, I guess, to dare. It's probably the most emotional element of this because you have to overcome fear and you have to have love in order to inspire you to any act of will. Is a conjunction of forces, a binding together, which is the fundamental consequence of love, this uniting, the yoga, the union. So I guess I can see that. I like the dragon attribution to daring a little bit better. And he left man with air and to know the bull is still earth and to keep silent. But he also has added the sun and the ankh, which is a sandal strap. So the virtue now is go. So will, dare, know, keep silent, and go. And this the element that he added is spirit. So you strap on your ankh, your sandal strap, and you go forth, right? And the spirit attribution, I think, is extremely important because the first, Eliphas Levi built the foundation of the pyramid. And later, Crowley comes along and adds a point in the center and elevate it above matter. And what happens if we draw lines from the base to this point? Now we have a pyramid. And so our structure has, it's complete now. And without the directive of spirit, without the, that which compels, right? I was driving along one day many, many years ago, and I thought, the organizing principle, God is the organizing principle. It's just this force that gives, that imposes order and symmetry onto the chaotic matter, or the chaotic energy, as it gives rise to things. And so all motion, all development, all activity, the wave itself, this is all compelled by what we call spirit. This is sort of an evolved conception of what spirit is. You know, in the old paradigm, we thought of spirit as, you know, consciousness that has been freed from a corporal body, or, you know, God. And people often made the mistake of attributing to these incorporeal intelligences greater authority than a human has. And this is a terrible mistake, because a person who is hearing voices in their head, who has been conditioned to believe that these voices, since they are spiritual, have the authority to compel him to act, has led to, you know, all sorts of murders and just terrible acts of lunacy and delusion and depravity. So it is really important to remember our sovereignty, and to, you know, we are all co-equals of the, and co-creators with the intelligence that is integrated into the fabric of the universe. And so it's like, you know, my thumb doesn't really have more authority than my pinky. It's just another part of the body. A better example even would be that this cell here, you know, is exactly the same as the cell over here on the other side of my hand. It's all God. There's nothing that is not God. It is just all the same. And so we have absolute sovereignty over our own actions, over our own being, over our own destiny. And so keeping all of these virtues properly understood and in perfect balance, this is one of the absolutely most powerful tools in our on our altar, we could say. So let's see if there is anything here that I should. Nothing else useful in my notes. I will look and try to see if I can find any, whether Crowley or Levi wrote about why the eagle. I think that attribution is partly just the fact that we are talking about the what is the word? The chariot of light, the Merkabah. That came down with wheels with eyes all over, the cherubim that had the head of a man, the head of a bull, the head of a lion, and the head of an eagle. So those are the animals that we were working with. I understand the attributions of the man, bull, and lion totally, but I do not understand the eagle, to be perfectly honest. Okay, so How does one find a reputable source of this knowledge without organizational initiation? Uh, that's actually not as difficult as you might think. If you develop the skills that are necessary to interface with the universe and your own consciousness, you will develop a dialogue directly with the light itself that will inform you of anything that you need to know, anything of relevance. The Kabbalion is a great source of dogma-free, objective information. I have done a full series of videos on the Kabbalion. I made a playlist. They're all there except for number 2, which is only available to my patrons. By the way, you guys, one more time, hit the like button, share, support us. Did we lose the internet? No, we didn't. It's just my computer glitching out. There are ways to support us one time in Zelle and PayPal and Cash App. All I'm missing is Venmo. So anyways, the Kabbalion, and you know, I feel like Crowley's stuff really is the best. I have never seen the kind of literary pyrotechnics and the clarity and power that Crowley was able to elucidate this knowledge better than anyone. I've never seen his equal. You know, there were a lot of unfortunate things that he said and maybe did and wrote, but I've always felt that you need to be able to separate the art from the artist, and that it was actually important. You know, there's not a grain of sand in the universe that's out of place. It's important that he wasn't perfect, because I think that the idea that illumination and enlightenment actually means that you become like a totally harmless pacifist. You know, you're all love, and that's just not real. It's not a reflection of the universe, which is a reflection of the consciousness that created us. It's not a reflection of deity. It's nothing but a tool that institutionalized religion uses to create sheep that they can control. That's it. I'm not saying that you shouldn't be good. I consider myself a white hat or right hand path person. I'm working for the collective well-being. But I also understand that creation and destruction is, you know, that's the format of this universe. And I don't think it's realistic to believe that our prophets and, you know, adepts and people that are bringing this divine knowledge to us are all going to be totally pure and holy. In fact, when you subject all of these people to scrutiny, the ones that we are actually, you know, that are in recent history, more recent history, even the best of them had profound flaws. If you look at the musicians that have played that part in our society, they were all royally fucked up. It doesn't mean that their message was any less, or that their work was any less genius, or that their ability to shed light and spread light was any less. Because they had issues, because they were human, because they're made of equal parts light and darkness. There's nothing in the universe that is not, you know, and so to disregard Crowley because he said some absolutely wretched things, I think is a huge mistake, and a lot of people make that mistake. And as I was saying, I think it's actually important that he was expressing the totality of existence, because in my mind, that's what real, you know, omniscience, omnipresence, and omnipresence, you know, the 3 O's, that to achieve real illumination, I think, is to be able to understand and appreciate the universe and all of its constructs from every potential possible perspective. That is what the one mind is actually doing, right? So, you know, and that we have to be able to compartmentalize. It doesn't mean that you should do evil, but should you learn to listen to black metal if you're incapable of appreciating it? Absolutely. You know, Crowley's practices where you do whatever it is that you absolutely abhor until you start to like it, that was the purpose behind that. Because your goal is to develop this godlike, and you know, if you're a real mystery school adept or initiate or student, you're trying to become an abscissimus, which is a fully realized being in a meat suit, basically a god in a meat suit. And so you're going to be able to appreciate your creation from every possible vantage point. And I think that's a really difficult thing for a lot of people to accept, that all of the worst, most atrocious horrors that happen in the universe are willed by that which created it, because it doesn't care whether it's a good experience or a bad experience. It's just the experience that it's after. It's about fulfilling every possible experience from every possible perspective. That's it. That's it. It's not about making bliss for everything all the time. If it was, that's what we'd experience, and that's not what's happening. And another way that was expressed is that the goal is to become like he in whom suffering and glory are indistinguishable. Because you are trying to understand the universe in its totality, right? And that's another reason why it's so important to have the self-knowledge of such tremendous depth. And yes, Abraxas is a glyph. It adds up to 365. It's a glyph. It's both a numerical and a allegorical representation of the sun and the light, and that is definitely the purpose of Abraxas. But yeah, you're never going to understand the universe. You're never going to achieve illumination. You're never going to have any kind of meaningful enlightenment unless you are able to see and comprehend and appreciate every element of the universe, dark, light, good, bad, whatever, at least to the degree that you can understand any perspective. It doesn't mean that you need to assume it for yourself. I hope that makes sense. And that's, again, like I was saying, the reason why this really, really deep self-knowledge is so important, because, you know, if you really pursue that kind of illumination, and you don't want to become evil, then you have to have a really clear idea of, you know, who you are and what it is that you are trying to become. I know all of this stuff, but I choose to support the collective. I realize I could be totally evil without consequence, and that's totally acceptable to the universe. It's that you would not be suffered for it, be punished for it even, really, outside of consequence of your actions, maybe, because that is one of the roles that people need to fulfill in the universe. It's just how it is. I just choose not to take that path because it doesn't suit me. It's not my purpose. It's not my function. And there are other people who fulfill those type of roles perfectly well. They do not need my contribution in that regard. So thank you guys so much for spending this time with me. I'm going to go eat dinner. And I've been practicing a lot, developing my voice again, practicing guitar every single day, and I'm doing these music streams. The sound's been hit or miss, but I think the last one, the first 13 minutes are kind of, the bass is overwhelming the speakers, doesn't sound great. But the next time you see one of those thumbnails, please jump in and share them. Try to get people on board, because I'm really trying to put energy back into that. It's been years since I've really been serious about it. So it's going to be interesting to see what I can do, because I'm really trying to go pedal to the metal with that. I don't know if you're still there, Micah, but yeah, just, watch your humility. When I found myself in this position where, because my sort of spiritual stuff happened at the same time as my band started to kind of get some attention locally. And so there were a lot of pretty girls all of a sudden throwing themselves at me, and all of this ego building stuff all happening at once. So I thought I was prepared for that because I knew about the dangers of the ego, and I thought I was on guard, and it totally turned out that I wasn't. So you really have to be really vigilant in your efforts to maintain humility, because there's definitely a part of everyone that wants to embrace the wish demon of ego and become inflated. And the other problem is that it's not untrue that you are the Most High God. And so it becomes very, very easy to confuse being a fragment of that with being the totality, with being that You know what I mean? You thinking that you individually are the Most High God and nothing else is. You know what I mean? That's a very common experience for men that undergo this process of initiation. So you really have to be on guard for it. All right, guys, thank you so much. Please hit the like button, share, subscribe, support the channel on Patreon or Zelle, PayPal, Cash App, cryptocurrency, and I will be back tomorrow with a music stream, and we will have the best sound quality and the best track list. Also, bring your requests. I'll play anything that you ask me to. So we'll see you guys tomorrow.